Welcome back to Silent Husband Club. We know it's been a while since our last story, but we're here again, and from now on, we'll do our best to bring you new stories every single day. What would you do if the home you thought was safe suddenly betrayed you? If one quiet evening revealed a stain, a secret, and a truth that would forever shatter your marriage? Tonight, I'll take you inside that night, the night everything began to unravel. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. It helps us grow and keeps you updated. The late April air clung heavy with the scent of magnolia as I pulled my Lexus into the cul-de-sac. Street lamps flickered alive, stretching shadows across manicured lawns, giving the neighborhood its usual false sense of calm. Inside the car, I sat for a moment longer, inhaling deeply as if I could trap that fleeting sweetness in my chest before stepping back into a life I wasn't sure I recognized anymore. I glanced at my watch. 8:17 p.m. Another day in the brutal machinery of high finance behind me. Numbers balanced, clients reassured, boardrooms pacified. All that remained was supposed to be peace. Yet, as I reached for the front door of the brick house Claire and I had chosen for its promise of stability, I felt that familiar knot tightening in my stomach, as though my body already sensed what my mind had not yet discovered. The foyer was dim, lit only by the glow of a single lamp. Claire's shoes sat neatly by the door, their delicate straps perfectly aligned, almost too perfect. I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror, dark hair streaked with the first silver at the temples, a suit still molded to my shoulders. I looked like a man in control. But then I saw it. Her skirt. Draped over the coat rack. Cream-colored, soft, familiar. And there, near the hem, a small smear of white. At first, it looked almost innocent, like a brush of paint. But the longer I stared, the clearer it became out of place, intimate, wrong. My pulse quickened. I stepped closer, fingers hovering over the fabric, half hoping it would vanish if I blinked. But it didn't. It stared back at me like an accusation. "Claire?" My voice was steady, too steady, but low, cautious. Silence. No answer. Only the faint hum of the air conditioner and the restless whisper of leaves against the windows. I walked further inside. Her purse lay open on the coffee table, beside two half-empty wine glasses, their rims catching the lamplight. I sat down slowly, the quiet of the house pressing against my chest. A glass of red wine waited for me as though placed deliberately. I lifted it, smelled it, set it down untouched. But the image of that stain clung to me, burned into my mind. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification from the security system I'd installed. A new file uploaded. My thumb tapped the screen before I had time to think. The footage flickered to life, grainy, dim, time-stamped just minutes before. Claire appeared on screen. Laughing. Leaning into someone whose face the shadows concealed. A man's hand rested on her waist, firm, possessive. Then the feed cut out. My hand trembled. The glass slid across the table, spilling red arcs across the wood. And in that instant, everything I thought I knew about my wife, about my marriage, about myself, shifted. Nothing in the house smelled like magnolia anymore. It smelled like betrayal. I shut myself inside my study, the heavy oak door clicking shut as though sealing me into a different world. The glow of my computer monitor filled the darkened room, and there it was, a file waiting for me, stamped with a name I knew too well. Adrian Cole. I had only met him once, 6 months earlier at a charity gala, smooth smile, lean build, a man who thrived in the shadows of neon lights and bass-heavy nights. A DJ. A creature of the city's midnight pulse. And now, he was inside my home. Or at least, he had been close enough to touch the woman I thought I knew better than anyone. My fists tightened at my sides as I stared at the screen, the memory of Claire's laughter replaying again and again, each time sharper, crueler. The silence of the house pressed harder on me than the music of Adrian's world ever could. I could almost hear it, though, bleeding into my mind, the throb of a bass line, the energy of a crowd. And in the middle of that storm, my wife had sought something I apparently no longer gave her. My chest tightened with a mixture of rage and shame. I had been so careful, so precise with every detail of our life, with every investment, with every promise. But marriage isn't numbers on a balance sheet, and I was only now realizing that precision is a poor substitute for passion. I rose from my chair and crossed the hallway into our bedroom. Moonlight spilled in soft ribbons across the floor. For a moment, I thought perhaps I'd find her there, asleep, and this nightmare would dissolve into the fragile peace of routine. But the bed was empty. Sheets rumpled. And then I saw it, a bulge beneath the duvet, a shape that did not belong. I pulled back the comforter with a hand that trembled despite my best efforts to steady it. A toy. A crude, plastic truth lying against the linen like a confession. Not hidden well, not hidden at all. My breath caught in my throat. I could almost hear my own pulse clicking in my ears. A dozen explanations clawed their way through my mind, maybe a prank, maybe something she'd bought on a whim, maybe, but no. Nothing fit. It wasn't an accident. It was a symbol. And it told me one thing clearly: there were parts of her I didn't know, and perhaps never had. The door creaked open. Claire stood in the doorway, eyes swollen from tears, makeup smudged, hair falling loose. She looked smaller than I remembered, fragile almost. Her voice broke the silence. "Daniel, it's not what you think." My laugh came out hollow, bitter, the kind of sound that doesn't belong in a marriage bed. I gestured to the object, my hand hovering above it like it might burn me. "Then help me understand. Because you told me jokes, stories about friends, about Adrian. But this?" My tone cracked despite myself. "This isn't a joke." She took a step forward, her shoulders sagging under the weight of something she couldn't name. And then I noticed something else on the nightstand, half hidden by a lamp. A canister. Matte black. I picked it up, twisted the cap, let the faint scent of chemicals escape into the room. "Anti-trail spray," I said quietly. "You didn't want me to follow you." Her silence confirmed it. My wife, the woman who once swore she had nothing to hide, had been erasing her own tracks. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks as she whispered. I panicked. "Adrian, he said it was harmless, that it would make me feel alive again." I didn't know how to stop. Her words cracked me open. Harmless? To her, maybe. To me, it was poison. My hands tightened around the canister before setting it down, a controlled movement masking the chaos inside me. For a moment, I wanted to shout, to rage, to let fury flood the room and drown both of us. But I didn't. I stood there, breathing through clenched teeth, my eyes fixed on her as though I could hold her accountable just by refusing to look away. She whispered again, "I didn't mean to hurt you." My lips curved into something between a smile and a grimace. "No," I said. "But you did." And as her confession lingered in the air, as sharp as the night itself, I realized this wasn't only about Claire. It was about Adrian too. A stranger who had entered my house without ever stepping inside. A shadow I couldn't ignore. That night, I understood something clearly for the first time. This wasn't going to end with tears on a bedroom floor. It was going to end in war. The following day I couldn't concentrate on anything but the images that had been burned into my mind. Claire's laugh, Adrian's hand on her waist, the shadowed intimacy that spoke louder than any confession she had whispered. I moved through my office like a ghost, shaking hands, nodding at deals, giving orders, yet all of it hollow. Numbers still moved on screens, clients still demanded reassurance, but I was already elsewhere. My war had begun, and the battlefield would not be in boardrooms, it would be in the shadows where Adrian thrived. By evening, I stood outside Eclipse, the club pulsing with bass that made the sidewalk tremble beneath my shoes. A curved neon sign glowed above the steel doors, its light painting the faces of those waiting in line with an artificial glow, eager to surrender themselves to the music inside. I straightened my blazer, smoothing the fabric as though preparing for a duel. I wasn't here for pleasure. I wasn't here to dance or drink. I was here to see the man who thought he could step into my life and take what was mine. Inside, smoke clung to the air like a second skin, and the strobe lights carved sharp wounds of light across a crowd that moved in frantic devotion to the sound. Every beat seemed to echo inside my chest, not with joy, but with anger. I moved toward the bar, ordered a bourbon neat, and let my eyes settle on the elevated DJ booth. And there he was, Adrian Cole. Tall, lean, dressed in black, headphones around his neck like a crown. His fingers slid over the mixer with the precision of a surgeon, controlling the crowd as though he owned them. He looked untouchable, confident, adored. The very image of power in his domain. I watched him closely, studying every movement, every flick of his hand. The man had control, I'll give him that. The crowd surged when he wanted it to, fell into hushed anticipation when he pulled the sound back. He commanded them with invisible strings, and I could see now why Claire had been drawn into his orbit. But that realization didn't sting as much as I expected. If anything, it hardened me. Because I knew then I could never compete with Adrian on the dance floor. But he could never compete with me in the world that truly mattered: control, money, power. As the music pounded, I pressed a button on my cufflink, signaling to the investigator I had stationed outside. The confirmation buzzed back on my watch. Target confirmed. Live feed secured. Adrian wasn't just being watched by me anymore. Every move he made, every face he met tonight was being catalogued. He thought he was in control, but he was already inside my net. Then, something unexpected happened. His eyes, dark and sharp, lifted from the mixer and scanned the crowd. For a fraction of a second, they locked on mine. The music stuttered, and the lights narrowed to a spotlight above his booth. Time slowed. My bourbon burned in my throat, and in that stillness, I felt as though he saw me, not just a man at the bar, but a threat. His lips curved into a faint, knowing smile, and through the microphone his voice carried across the club, "You're not from here." Calm, but edged like a knife. I raised my glass in a silent salute, forcing a steady smile of my own. "Just passing through," I replied, my voice cutting through the hush. The crowd stirred, restless, eager for the music to return. Adrian let the beat drop again, and the crowd roared. But between us, something unspoken had already shifted. As the night wore on, I didn't move closer. I didn't need to. I had seen what I came to see: his power, his arrogance, his awareness. And I knew now that this wasn't going to be a simple confrontation. This was a game of patience, a contest of leverage. And I was ready to play it longer and harder than he ever could. When I finally left the club, the neon sign buzzed faintly behind me, casting fractured shadows across the pavement. My phone buzzed in my pocket, new uploads waiting. More proof, more pieces of the puzzle. And as I slid behind the wheel of my car, I realized something that steadied me: Adrian Cole might own the night, but I would own his downfall. The dinner was my stage, and I had set it with precision. Candlelight washed the oak table in a glow that was almost holy, though nothing about this night would be sacred. 3 places set, one for me, one for Claire, one for Adrian. Fine china gleamed, crystal glasses caught the firelight, and between us ran a deep red runner, like a river of blood waiting to be spilled. At 9 o'clock sharp, the door opened. Claire stepped inside first, her dress plain, her eyes raw from too many tears. She looked smaller than I remembered, stripped of the armor she once carried so effortlessly. And then came Adrian, swagger muted but still there, a man used to commanding a crowd but now wary of a battlefield not his own. They sat across from me, the scrape of chairs loud in the silence. I poured the champagne, 3 glasses, each kissed with a drop from the vial I had hidden. The liquid darkened into a ruby shade, and I watched their eyes flicker with unease. Claire swallowed hard. Adrian stared at the glass but didn't touch it. I lifted mine first, my voice calm, almost casual. "Tonight," I said, "we're here to speak the truth." The weight of those words pressed down on the room like a storm cloud, ready to break. Claire's hands trembled as she reached for her glass. She drank first, and with that act, she surrendered. Her confession followed in a whisper, fragile but sharp enough to cut me open. I was lonely. I wanted something that wasn't calculated. "I didn't mean to hurt you." Her voice cracked, and tears streaked her cheeks, but I let her words hang in the air without reply. They were a blade meant for me, and I absorbed the wound in silence. Adrian leaned forward, defiant even in confession. "I never promised permanence," he said. "It was spontaneous. I didn't plan to hurt anyone." His arrogance dripped through the calm, and for a moment, I saw the man who had smirked from the DJ booth, the man who believed he was untouchable. My jaw clenched, but I said nothing. Instead, I slid a black envelope across the table to him, then an ivory one to Claire. Their terms. Their fates. Written down, signed by my hand. Claire picked hers up with trembling fingers, her eyes scanning the conditions: therapy, confession to her family, no more contact with Adrian. She looked up at me, broken, desperate. "And if I refuse?" she asked. My gaze hardened. "Then everything goes public. The videos, the surveillance, the stain of betrayal." She didn't argue. She nodded, small and defeated. Adrian opened his own envelope and paled as he read the financial penalties that would cripple his career for years. His jaw worked as though he wanted to fight, but he didn't. He only muttered, "I accept." The silence that followed was suffocating. Only the drip of wax from the candles filled the void, steady and slow, like the last grains of sand in an hourglass. I leaned back, watching them both, 2 people who had stripped me of peace, now stripped themselves of pride. "Good," I said softly, lifting my glass in a final toast. To truth, however bitter. They drank because there was nothing else left for them to do. And I sat at the head of that table, knowing I had won, yet feeling the victory taste more like ashes than triumph. For in their faces I saw not just guilt, not just defeat, but also the reflection of the man I had become to orchestrate this. Cold, ruthless, deliberate. And as I sealed their futures with my own hands, I wondered if I had saved myself or damned us all. The fallout came swiftly, sharper than I could have imagined. That very night, under the pulsing lights of eclipse, I held the crowd in the palm of my hand, not with music but with truth. Screens around the club flickered alive, playing the footage from my mansion, Claire's broken confession, Adrian's hollow acceptance, and my own toast to honesty. The music died. Conversations froze. The roar of the club collapsed into a collective gasp. In that instant, their reputations weren't whispers anymore, they were public spectacle, broadcast in neon and glass. Claire's face filled the screens, labeled as unfaithful. Adrian's name was dragged down with captions branding him disgraced. The crowd reacted like a living beast, some shocked, some hungry for scandal, all devouring what they saw. And as Adrian's jaw tightened and Claire crumbled, I stood calm, the storm's architect. Then the lights cut out completely, plunging the club into darkness. For a heartbeat, only silence and panic reigned. Then the emergency lights flared on, painting everything in a blood-red glow. Heavy footsteps thundered across the floor. Agents burst through the entrance, their badges gleaming in the crimson haze. Voices rang out, sharp, commanding. "Adrian Cole, you're under arrest for money laundering and obstruction of justice. Step forward." The crowd erupted into a frenzy of whispers, confusion, and disbelief. Claire shrank against the bar as an agent approached her gently. "Miss Whitmore, you'll need to come with us too. Your cooperation has been noted." I watched as my wife, the woman I had once vowed to protect, was led away under the banner of betrayal. Adrian, cuffed and flanked by agents, shot me a final look. For the first time, there was no confidence in his eyes. Only the awareness that he had been outplayed. The club, once Adrian's kingdom, was now a graveyard of illusions. Patrons spilled out onto the street, their phones buzzing with the story they had just witnessed firsthand. My plan had unfolded with the precision of a blade, betrayal exposed, reputations ruined, enemies dismantled. Yet as I walked away from Eclipse, my footsteps echoing in the night, the victory didn't feel clean. I had won, yes. But the sight of Claire's tear-streaked face as she was taken away clung to me like smoke. Back in my study, as dawn crept in through the tall windows, I sat with a glass of bourbon untouched at my side. Notifications pinged across my phone: Adrian's assets frozen, club debts transferred, accounts reinstated. Every cog of the machine had turned exactly as I had commanded. On paper, it was flawless. Yet the silence of the house pressed against me harder than any noise. My hands rested on the desk, steady, but my heart felt hollow. What had I secured, really? Control? Revenge? Or only the ashes of what used to be love? The war was ending, but the battlefield inside me was only beginning. Morning light crept into the study, golden and quiet, painting long streaks across the mahogany desk. My phone buzzed with a series of messages: the attorney confirming that Eclipse's debts were officially mine, the bank notifying me that my accounts were reinstated, and finally an email from the U.S. Attorney's Office. It was addressed to cooperating witnesses, including Claire. I didn't bother opening it. I already knew what it meant: deal struck, charges softened, justice sealed neatly away. The machinery of my plan had done its work, every cog fitting perfectly into place. I stood, walking across the study to a side table where 3 crystal glasses still sat from the night of my truth dinner. Only one remained stained, the one I had pressed into Claire's hand, dark ruby remnants clinging to its kerf. I held it in the morning light, watching how the red shimmered like dried blood, a silent memorial to trust broken beyond repair. For all my planning, all my victories, nothing could erase that night. Nothing could give me back what she had taken. A sound drew me to the front hall. On the mat lay an envelope, cream-colored, sealed in handwriting I knew instantly. I broke it open, reading the words with a tightening chest. "Thank you for uncovering my truth. I'm leaving tonight to start anew. Forgive me, and forgive yourself. See." I stood there for a long time, card trembling slightly in my hand. She had chosen escape, not reconciliation. She had left me the wreckage, and perhaps, in her own way, freedom. I stepped outside, the cool morning air heavy with dew, the garden alive with birdsong. The magnolia tree stood still, its petals scattered like confetti after a storm. I placed her card on the edge of the fountain, letting the water's reflection blur her words into unreadable shapes. For a moment, I closed my eyes and felt something unexpected: not triumph, not bitterness, but a faint echo of relief. Maybe even the possibility of peace. I turned back toward the house, shoulders straight, the silence around me no longer suffocating but strangely steady. The storm had passed. Adrian was broken, Claire was gone, and I remained changed, perhaps scarred, but unbowed. Alone, yes, but alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. The echoes of betrayal would never leave me, but neither would the strength I found in its aftermath. And as the sun rose higher, spilling light across the courtyard, I realized something I hadn't dared to before. Sometimes survival itself is victory. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, shocked you, or simply made you think, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment, your thoughts, your story, your truth. Subscribe for more raw, real, and unforgettable confessions. And if this story made you feel seen, share it. Someone else might need to hear it too. You're not alone here. This channel is a safe space for those who've been betrayed, broken, and rebuilt.